see a couple of you in the room on this Friday, very hot Friday, San Diego Comic-Con Friday, end of the week Friday. Finally, Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers VIP and Patreon members from around the world. You can show your support and get access to a virtual ton of bonus content when you become a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Well, happy Friday to all of you. Hope you're having a good day. If you're in the chat, go ahead and feel free to talk and share your thoughts. A little bit of, pre-show announcements for those of you that get to tune in and listen to the show when it's live on Friday right here on twitch.tv/Major Spoilers. I've been running the Adventures of Superman as kind of the lead up to what the show's about. And I went from episode 1 all the way to episode 6 this week. Not because I don't have the complete thing, but, and I know this is to show how horrible people are, but the members of the Clan of the Fiery Cross use some very derogatory language in those episodes when they're talking about Chinese people. And I thought maybe that's probably not something we should be promoting, even though that would have been, it's the time period and all that other stuff. Oh man, San Diego Comic-Con's going on. Lots of interesting things going on this week. So that's why it went from episode 1 to episode 6 over the last week. And if you were wondering what the big break was and why it was, that is why. This just come across. This is why I got distracted there for just a moment. We've heard this is just coming out of San Diego Comic-Con. We'll have more San Diego Comic-Con news coming up a little bit later in the show. But we've been hearing news that they were going to reboot The Rocketeer, and they were going to make The Rocketeer a young girl. And now it looks like the Rocketeer is going to be headed to Disney Junior as a CGI 3D animated series. Kit Secord learns she's secretly next in line to become the Rocketeer, a rocket-packed wearing superhero who can fly. Armed with her cool new gear and secret identity, Kit takes to the skies to protect the citizens of Hughesville with the help of her best friend Tesh, Bulldog sidekick Butch, and airplane mechanic grandfather Ambrose Secord. The Rocketeer will be able to be seen on Disney Junior and Disney Now apps. So go check that out. I was hoping for a live-action movie. I saw Sideshow Collectibles has a number of really cool-looking, like there's a Rocketeer bust that they have that looks very cool, and then it looks like they're going to be coming out with a 1/6 scale Cliff Secord Rocketeer figure that has, Cliff in his classic Rocketeer outfit. It's also got his head, which I'm going to bet is removable, that you can replace with the Rocketeer helmet and the backpack. And I also saw that they had a little exhaust flames attachment that you could attach to that backpack. No word on when that's going to be released, or at least I didn't see when that was going to be released, but I bet that's about a $350 6-scale action figure when it comes out. I might be having to save my dollars. For those of you who are patrons, I kind of recorded a few thoughts on the San Diego Comic-Con and how we cover the Comic-Con and what we're able to do with Comic-Con. And I had mentioned that we were talking about the Sideshow Collectible stuff, and I had mentioned that a lot of these are so limited edition, and they're so expensive that by the time I was able to save up to get the Big Trouble in Little China Kurt Russell 6-scale figure, they'd already sold out. I went to eBay last night, and they're still reasonably priced. I might still be able to get one of those. I don't know. Hey, Kevin is in the chat room. Hi, Kevin. As is Balooey and Xanthosaurus. Pound sign guy. And the one and only J. Michael T. is going to be there. I may be going to the San Diego Comic-Con this weekend, and I'm dreading what it's going to be like, what it's going to do to my budget. I'm addicted to Sideshow collectibles. Well, you're going to be in trouble because, oh my goodness, there are some awesome looking things there. Now, not all of their stuff is available now. They did, I know, have a bunch of stuff that they were bringing to the show, but I don't know what they're going to have available then and what is coming out and what stuff you just might want to save your money for and put on the wish list and on the order now and it'll ship in a year and a half list. I'm a big fan of what Hot Toys does. Sideshow Collectibles is the Hot Toys distributor here in the United States, and oh my goodness, if I had a lot of money, I would be buying a lot of that stuff. I know one of the things, and I talked about this on the this bonus episode that's available to our patrons. One of the things that looks very cool is a 6th scale. You know the Anakin Skywalker. It was his little flying ship that he has when he's on whatever, not Cloud City, but when he's on the main capital city's planet that he flies around in, that yellow one. There's a 6th scale one of those that's now available. I'm interested in checking that out. I would never buy that one because I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, although I do have a couple of Star Wars 6th scale figures that I got when Hastings was closing, and I got those at a pretty good price. I probably would not buy that. Now, the 6th scale vehicle that I do have is the Back to the Future one, the DeLorean, that is still in the box, and I've never taken out of the box. I need to do that, but I just don't have a place to put it right now. We're working on that. I had to go in and rent a storage facility to start moving things out of the Nerd Room of Doom so we can clean that up and get everything organized and ready for display and other things. So more on that in a while. So one of the things that happens when I'm waiting for San Diego Comic-Con news to come in, and in the last hour, a whole bunch of it hit. It's one of the other bad things about being in a different time zone. By the time all the noon announcements start rolling out, it's already 4 o'clock here or 3 o'clock here. But I decided, since I had it, that I would sit down and watch the Hellboy movie, the one that just came out this past year, the one with Harbaugh in it. And if you follow Major Spoilers on Twitter, you kind of know I had some thoughts on it. And so here's what is good. David Harbaugh, I think, is really good as Hellboy. I think the Hellboy prosthetics and the Hellboy look that they designed looks really, really good. I like Daniel Day Kim in the piece. I like Ian McShane in the piece. I even like Mila Jovovich in this as the overall big bad person in the movie. And what I like about this Hellboy movie is they have infused it with so much stuff from the comic books. In fact, and this isn't a spoiler. Well, it is a spoiler. The movie opens with a loose adaptation of Hellboy in Mexico, where he goes down and he fights the vampires with the luchadors and all that stuff. And I was like blown away that was in it. And then they've also got the story of the Changeling. I think that's from the first volume of Hellboy. I can't remember which volume that's in. Where, you know, the people are like, something's wrong with our kid. We think it's a changeling. And he goes in and grabs it with a pair of iron pliers. And the thing's like, ah! And Hellboy's like, you got to bring me back the real kid. There is so much of that in this movie. You know, they borrow from The Wild Hunt. They borrow from Darkness Calls. They borrow from The Storm and the Fury. And I find that super, super fascinating. And that is so cool. Baba Yaga shows up in this. Lobster Johnson shows up in this. Lobster Johnson played by, what's his name? Thomas Hayden Church, I think. Or is it Thomas Hayden Church or Hayden Thomas Church? I forget which way you're supposed to say his name. I mean, the correct way, preferably. But I can't remember which order his names go in. But he plays Lobster Johnson. And I think that is super amazing. So why, if it's bringing all this Hellboy goodness into it, did the movie fail so miserably? Well, Have you seen this web series now? It's a TV series or a Netflix series or wherever it's at series called Drunk History Lesson. In Drunk History Lesson, where someone gets wildly drunk and then they ask you to explain something from history, like, tell me about the Battle of 1812 or the War of 1812. And somebody drunk off their butt is trying to explain the War of 1812.
Here's what I found.
Oh, I didn't even ask. And the iPhone is responding. Well, the drunk history lesson and the hilarity that ensues from people screwing up history or getting it wrong kind of feels how this Hellboy movie went. Because you get this really great premise of Hellboy in Mexico, and they set it up perfectly, and you know exactly where this is going in the comic book, and then they totally fall on their face. Or the Wild Hunt totally falls on its face, or, the little changeling story falls right on its face. It's like, we're in a Major League Baseball game, and I'm throwing you an underhand pitch, and you still whiff it. You still whiff it. And that is one of the biggest problems with Hellboy, is the stories are just not landing. Perfect setup. It's coming right across home plate. You're going to be able to hit this with ease. It's a softball pitch. You should be able to knock it out of the park, and yet they fail each and every time. Now, I can understand why it fails, right? Kevin Smith this past a couple of weeks ago, I'm so far behind on podcasts, is talking about the Sandman television show. And he and his co-host were talking about, would you want to write for the Sandman television show? And Kevin Smith's like, no, because all I would be doing is taking Neil Gaiman's scripts and just turning them in with my name on it and saying, here you go, because there's nothing to add, nothing to change. And his co-host, which I forget his name, he's a very talented writer. But he's like, no, I would love to write Sandman, because what I would do is I would, read the source material a couple times, then tell you my interpretation of that story, adding things that need to be added and removing things that are not necessary, and hopefully that will work. And I can see that. It feels like that's what happened here with Hellboy. Someone read Hellboy in Mexico and said, oh, this is a perfect way to set up this movie. And then they tank it. And then they're just like, oh, yeah, Hellboy goes down. He fights some luchador guys in Mexico, and he's really tight with this guy. And the guy turns out to be a vampire, and he has to kill one of his best friends. And then he spends the next 3 months drunk. And totally missing what the core idea behind that Hellboy in Mexico story is about loss and friendship, and what does it mean to have people who accept you for who you are. And that doesn't happen at all in that opening story. Also, I think the problem is they tried to throw too many Hellboy stories into the mix. I mean, Baba Yaga shows up and is like, give me your eye. And I'm spoiling this for you, but I'm going to guess most of you are not going to watch this movie. And Hellboy's like, I need to know where, the Mila Jovovich's character is. And she's like, give me your eye. And he's like, okay, I'll be back. And then there's a fight, and then that's it. And it's just like, that really had no business being in here. And the appearance of Abe Sapien at the end has no real business being in the movie. It was just, I mean, it's not bad. It's just, you should have been going this way and you turned right at Albuquerque. The other thing that I thought was a real problem was the special effects and the CGI. Again, some spoiler talk for a movie that nobody is going to see. Ian McShane's character dies and then comes back as a ghost at the end of the movie. And it is so bad, it looks like they literally had Ian McShane wearing, like a green cloth around his neck and standing on a green screen, and they just keyed out of his head, and then they just stuck it onto a CGI decomposing ghost body which in itself looks disgusting, doesn't really look like a ghost. And the worst part is they didn't get the proportions right. Like, the body is really, really withered, yet the head is full size, you know, the full Ian McShane head. And it looks like the head has been lowered down too far onto the body. It just looks ridiculous. And a lot of the CGI looks like it is right out of a video game. For those of you that have been watching Red Dead Redemption 2, the game streams that I've been doing on Saturday afternoons and Saturday evenings right here on our Twitch channel, some of those cutscenes where, you know, Arthur goes and talks to the head guy in camp, who looks just like Ian McShane, by the way. Some of those animations and cutscenes from Red Dead Redemption 2 look like the quality of the animation from the Hellboy movie. I mean, there are parts where in this where it's bad. It's almost like the budget was so low, and I don't know what the budget was on this. $50 million budget. It looks like they said, you know what? We can't afford to send you anywhere, so you're going to do this whole movie on a green screen, and you can only shoot from one direction on the sets. Don't bother building more than 2 or 3 walls on your set, because you're never going to be able to shoot reverses easily in this location. So get used to that. Because so much of it is just like bad CGI, bad compositing, bad landscapes, bad special effects, bad smoke. And probably the grossest, and I mean grossest as in the largest, most egregious error that they make in here is that too many of the characters, too many of the CGI elements are rubbery. There is a character that is a warthog, a man warthog, a warthardigan man. I don't know what you would call it. But his face is just rubbery and moving around way too much. A lot of the blood, there's a lot of blood and guts. A lot of the blood and guts just doesn't look real. It looks fake. It looks rubbery. It doesn't even look like body parts. It literally looks like there was a scene, Hellboy has this moment where he realizes that if he takes this sword, that he's going to be killing people left and right. And have you guys seen the YouTube videos, the meme videos of the rubber skin guy, the CGI guy that's just like flopping around and walking around? Literally, as he's trying to cut down these crowds of people coming at him, it looks like a million rubber skin people just flopping around. Blah, blah, blah. It's the worst. And I haven't looked. I didn't look to see. I know who the CGI companies are. Rhythm and Hughes is one of the companies. They've been around forever doing the special effects, but I did not open up one of my industry magazines to see what software they were using. But to me, it looked like they were using a lot of Maya 3D stuff. But the problem is none of the stuff has weight. And that's the biggest thing in animation right now, is people forget that if you've played the Spider-Man game on the PS4, that Kingpin is a big, massive guy. He has weight. He shouldn't feel and move like a skinny guy in a CGI fat suit. It just doesn't work that way. So all of this combined together makes Hellboy a movie that just doesn't work. It makes Hellboy a movie that just looks bad. It has a great start and then just falls apart after that. And I've seen this not just, I mean, for those of you, again, who are Patreon members and you've listened to our Flashback podcast, a fan podcast about the CW series The Flash, you know that I have big issues with the effects on that show. How they're working with limited budgets and they're putting out what they can do on a super limited budget, and it all looks fake. It looks horrible. A lot of the city running scenes look like crap because there's no weight to anything. People aren't thinking about reflectivity and specularity and weight and physics. And it looks like crap. And unfortunately, we're going to be seeing a lot more of that in the future. You know, back when, was it The Life of Pi? When that won an Oscar. The very same day that Life of Pi was winning an Oscar, production special effects houses were closing because they didn't have the money to stay open. Even though these movies were making millions upon millions of dollars, it wasn't filtering down to the effects houses because everybody was trying to undercut the other guy to the point where everybody was working for peanuts, and so they couldn't keep their production houses open. And so the ones that are open are the ones that do the lowest quality work, the cheapest work. And we've talked also before on Finally Friday, the Major Spoilers podcast, and other places, that people want something that is just good enough, that is just okay. Well, it's just okay. I'll live with that. That's all right. I'll put up with that. We see that in our video games. We see that on our television shows. We see that in our movies. People want what is just good enough. This is something that goes all the way back to Thomas Edison. He made up that claim. He's like, hey, people will want something that's just good enough. So I will give them the lowest quality stuff, and they'll like it. And so with those things in mind, it should come as no surprise people's negative reactions to both the Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer, such a visceral negative reaction that the movie studio went in and said, oh no, we've got to fix this horrible CGI of the Sonic character. We've got to redesign this. We have to re-render this stuff out. We've got to get this done before the movie comes out. And also the tons of negative reaction to the just released yesterday trailer for Cats, the musical, the movie, which just looks horrifying. And it is literally people in, and maybe some of them are wearing some prosthetics, but it is literally people in green suits jumping around and having cat stuff mapped onto them. So much so that in many cases it doesn't look like fur at all. And it looks horrifying. The J. Michael T says, cats, wow, what happened? I really expected, says Baloo, I really expected the Aquaman CGI to be horrifying, but found it a lot better than I thought. True, but there are some really bad, we shot this against a green screen kind of stuff that is very, very obvious. And I'm not talking about the stuff that's underwater. I'm talking about everything done at the dock of the lighthouse. When people are coming up out of the water and having conversations and we see beautiful sunsets. That stuff looks horrible. That looks like crappy green screen. I mean, I literally teach my students how to do green screen that meets at least that quality, if not better quality than that. Horrifyingly beautiful. Come on. You cannot watch that trailer and think this is anything other than nightmare fuel. Oh, maybe you do like it. Maybe they are. Maybe the studio is thinking, oh, people are going to love this crap. But no, it looks horrible. And again, a lot of the problems with cats, beyond just the fact that the anthropomorphized cats are just like creepy as all get out, is again, they're not thinking about real physics. It's like, yes, we are shooting our actor against a green screen and we are shooting them with props and everything, but we're making sure that the subject is in focus. But we're also not doing the things in post to make the background slightly out of focus. You know, you can look behind me and you can see that background is not 100% in focus. In fact, it's kind of blurry, even ever so slightly. And if you go back and watch some of those scenes in that trailer, and I'm not saying for sure go back and watch the Cats trailer, because if you've watched it enough, there's not enough bleach in your house at the moment to get you through a second viewing of that trailer. But if you have seen the trailer, even the stills that are appearing all over social media, you can see those backgrounds are crisp, like infinite depths of field. And that may be something that they're doing on purpose to try to say, well, here's what the cat sees. And that's why everything is all sharp and in focus in this hyper reality of imagination. But dude, go and look at just go look at traditional animation. And you'll see how they throw backgrounds out of focus. Yes, you're exactly right, J. Michael T. The executives are going, well, I guess people will like this crap. Because we're okay with what is just good enough. And I keep thinking about that a lot in the things that I do. And I think that is to my own detriment, where I'm like, well, I guess if people just like what's good enough, I fall into that same trap, as creatives do. And that's a horrible way to look at it. And it's going to cause nothing but problems down the line. And if you think that the CGI in movies is getting bad, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Because people are not working in effects houses where they are working with traditional special effects, where they understand how smoke and fog and distance affect one another. They may not even be being taught at wherever they're getting their lessons from about how atmospheric, atmospheric diffusion. They may not even being taught those kinds of things. But if they can key something out and they can build something and they can animate it, physics be damned, then they're going to be hired. And if they work cheap, they're going to be hired. I kind of give The Flash a pass since it's TV and I don't expect great CGI, but you should. That's why I guess lately I've been kind of saying, let's go back to practical effects. That was my biggest complaint with Stranger Things Seasons 2 and the opening bits of Season 3 and a lot of Season 3. Is there so much special effects work that could have been done practically, would have taken a little bit of extra time, but those practical effects would have paid off and looked a lot better. Again, spoiler for Stranger Things Season 3, the battle at the Starcourt Mall, there is a car involved that gets flipped across the food court. That's a real car that they flipped and that they're pushing around. But then you go to some of the other shots that are clearly CGI, and it just looks fakey. It's a fakey. Don't buy into the fakey. We should expect more. Now, maybe the budgets would be higher. Hey, thank you for following Shock and Awe Toys. There's Chris. Or maybe it's not Chris. Practical effects are really good. And that's one thing I'm very surprised Jon Favreau has been very quiet on. Because he used to be a devotee of the practical effect. So much so that when he did the Zarathustra movie, Zathura, that's what it was, not Zarathustra. When he did the Zarathustra movie, he made sure that a lot of that stuff, as much as he could, was all practical effects because he believed that that was more believable. You know, a puppet character looks more believable than a CGI one in today's world. It scares me with The Lion King since I can't imagine doing the whole movie in CGI. Well, I mean, the original animated Lion King movie, not the Simba one, but or not Kimba, but the Disney Lion King movie, that had a lot of CGI in it. You just didn't know it. Or if you did notice it, it was blended so well that you didn't notice it. So a lot of that movie is CGI. Some people are, Lion King was good. I saw it this morning. Good. No, practical effects may not be the end-all be-all. But I do think that if you have the option of setting off, and if you go and watch, what's the movie where you have to kill one another? Not, with the girl in the lead. That movie. They've actually got some really cool practical effects where she is running through the forest and there are explosions going off. And they set it up in such a way that she was 100% safe as long as she was running in this like 10-yard wide Hunger Games, that's right. This 10-yard wide path. As long as she was running in that path, she was going to be safe 100%. Even if she tripped and fell, she would still be safe. And then all around the background, they've got these explosions going off. And that was all practical. And it looks awesome because you're getting the light reflecting off the skin. You're getting dust and real particles flying up in the air. But, then you look at some things and you're like, oh my gosh, that's... They had to, instead of letting Henry Cavill shave his mustache, we had to spend $1 billion to have that digitally removed. I always think of Evil Dead when thinking of good practical effects. That's pretty good. Shout outs to you figuring out that was based on Steven's description. I mean, come on. We're talking about drunk history lesson and the lessons of Hellboy. I can tell you everything about him. I can tell you everything about a movie, except the actors' names or the characters' names, or often the titles of the names. If it's names, that's where my shaky area is. Anyway, we are about out of time. Brandon Routh is going to play Superman again in the Arrowverse crossover that's coming in December, which I find interesting that he will be able to play Superman again right up next to the current guy who's on Supergirl, who plays Superman. I find that incredibly interesting because they're all doing the multiverse thing. But I'm going to find it interesting because we know that Legends of Tomorrow, or maybe they will have Legends of Tomorrow be part of this. Because that will be interesting to see Brandon Routh playing both the Atom and Superman in the same show, if they do that. It will also be interesting. Now, this was announced, I don't know if this was announced at Comic-Con today. Tyler Hoechlin or Hecklin is the other Superman on Supergirl. I think it would be really cool if they had Tom Welling and Dean Cain also appear as Superman in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think that would be very, very cool. I doubt they're going to let that happen, though. Let's see. Oh, so we didn't get a lot of news from the Avengers Endgame panel with the Russo brothers, except that the Russo brothers said that they're done with Marvel for a while, because now they're going to focus their attention on doing movie adaptations of Battle of the Planets, which should be really interesting. They haven't said whether that was live action or animated, but a Battle of the Planets live action motion picture is coming, and it's the Russo brothers, and with the success that they've had with Captain America and everything Avengers, I think they're going to be able to do whatever the heck they want to do, and it'll be good. They also announced that they will be adapting Grimjack, the comic book series from the late 80s, early 90s, into movie form. So we know that those are their next two movies. But what we didn't learn today at any Marvel panel as of yet, as of this recording, now those of you who are watching this on the replay over at youtube.com/majorspoilersvideo, what's Dean Cain up to these days? Dean Cain was actually playing Supergirl's father? No, yeah, father or uncle or something on that Supergirl series. Now, we still have the Marvel Big Hall H presentation, which is on Saturday at, I want to say, 5 o'clock p.m. We don't know what Marvel's going to do. But what I half expect that they will be talking, I don't think that they're going to reveal the entirety of Phase 4. If you think about it, in a 2-hour block, they basically have 4 segments that they can run, each a half hour, where they're like, hey, everybody, welcome, blah, 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 blah. Here's what we're going to announce. Here is the thing that we're going to bring out. Here are the stars from this. They're going to come out. They're going to say a few things. Maybe there'll be a question from the audience. And then by the time we shuffle all those people out, that's about 30 minutes. I mean, I've just talked about Hellboy and my problems with Hellboy, and we're already over 30 minutes. But there's only 4 announcements that I really think, and I don't think they're going to announce the entirety of Phase 4, also because, as I've mentioned on this week's Major Spoilers podcast, I think they're going to save a lot of that for D23 coming up next month in Anaheim. But I do expect that we will probably hear something about the Black Widow movie, because that's the one that we know is already filming. What I didn't realize until today, as I was starting to look things up, is that there are 2 Marvel movies coming out next year, or slated to come out next year. We don't know what those are, so I'm going to bet that we are going to find out at least what one of them is tomorrow. Here, and this is as of May, here are the Marvel movie dates that have not had any titles. May 1st, 2020, November 6th, 2020, February 12th, 2021, May 5th, 2021, November 5th, 2021, February 18th, 2022, May 6th of 22, and July 29th of 22. The movies we know that they are probably going to maybe talk about: Black Widow #1, Eternals #2, Shang-Chi is probably the best bet that is probably going to be the first movie. If they're not doing Black Widow, then it's definitely going to be Shang-Chi. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which we don't know what's going on with that because James Gunn has to do the the Suicide Squad movie first. So that one's going to be at least 2022. Doctor Strange 2, Black Panther 2, Thor 4 with Taika Waititi, which has just been announced that he will be coming on to direct, and maybe a Spider-Man 3 movie. And if they were really smart, if Marvel and Sony were really, really smart, they would have been very, very quiet about it. But they would have filmed 2 Spider-Man movies back to back while they had Tom Holland and everyone else available. That's what they should have done, so that they could say, hey, coming up next year, after the shocking reveal in that, mid-credit sequence, after that shocking reveal, you'll be able to find out what happens in November of 2020 in Spider-Man 3, Home for the Holidays. But I think, more than likely, we're going to get release dates for both the Black Widow movie and the Shang-Chi movie tomorrow. But I don't think we're going to get the entirety of the Phase 4 stuff announced tomorrow. Maybe they will. Maybe Disney will say, you know what, we've got so much Star Wars stuff that we're going to be talking about at D23, so much Disney stuff and Fox stuff that we're going to be talking about D23. Let's let Marvel have Comic-Con. But I doubt it. We'll find out tomorrow, I guess. Do you guys have any predictions? Let's see. We have... we've made real Iron Man suits. They cost $300 and everyone can buy one. Funny you should mention that, because Marvel Studios, and I guess in conjunction with Netflix, they are auctioning off the costumes worn in the Netflix series. So if you want to buy that Daredevil costume, it's up for auction. If you want to buy Luke Cage's costume, it's up for auction. They're showing those off at the San Diego Comic-Con. I declare SDCC a success after the Battle of the Planets announcement. All it was, hey, we're working on Battle of the Planets. They announced nothing about release date. They announced nothing about, directing, starring, anything like that, except that they are working on it. Is Sony making another Into the Spider-Verse movie? They might be, but I don't think that would be part of a Marvel panel, because Spider-Verse is not part of the main Marvel continuity. That would be a Sony announcement to do that. They might do that at a Marvel one, but I seriously doubt it. I mean, they are working on another movie. I'd like to hear about Doctor Strange 2. I think we all would. Well, when you first joined, so, Chris is sitting there going, man, I had to wait 10 minutes to talk about my beard. It's a real may not be as much of it tomorrow, though. I'm going to have to go into my little slider in my CGI outlet and say, make that a little bit cleaner. Oh, yeah, Captain Marvel 2 as well. Marvel will for sure announce something Captain Marvel. But the reason why you had to wait 10 minutes is when you first sign up and you first join or follow or whatever, they make you wait 10 minutes before you can put a comment in there. So we've got a number of movies on the plate, all sequels except for Shang-Chi and the Eternals. I don't know if they're ready to do anything with the Eternals yet. Maybe. So that's where we're sitting. I will find out probably this time tomorrow, or probably a little bit later tomorrow, probably around 7 o'clock Central Time. And I think that's going to be the big thing for the show, is what is Marvel going to do? There's already been a number of other cool announcements. I'll be having some more stuff up later tonight. I do have to edit this week's Critical Hit for everyone. But I'll get some stuff down. And if you are a patron member at the $10 and higher, the gold level and higher, don't forget tomorrow, Saturday, the 20th, at 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time. We've moved the time up 2 hours because of the comic book convention. We will be doing our monthly live stream where you guys can talk. I think this month it's going to be me, Brian, and Matthew, I think, are going to be on the show. You can ask us questions. I'll tell you some things going on behind the scenes. We'll talk about some Patreon things. We'll talk about some insights from a bunch of places that I've been looking up. Also some things that are going on at Major Spoilers and a whole lot more. That's all coming up on the VIP live stream for July. And I think that's where we need to end it right now. I heard the door open upstairs and one child run in, so I'm sure chaos is going to ensue shortly. So we will wrap it up right there and say good night to all of you, goodbye to all of you. Be nice to each other. Do good, be good, right? And we'll see you again, I think, next week. I know probably on the Major Spoilers podcast, we're going to be talking a lot about the San Diego Comic-Con. A new Comic Dorks is coming out on the Frog Pants Network next week. We're going to be talking about Comic-Con there. Why don't you come up with some Comic-Con thoughts and reactions for next week's show, and we'll let your comments drive a lot of next week's show. Yes, be excellent to one another and party on, dudes. Take care.